We do have a member of the public / elected official. No.
Does that mean you want me to talk or is public comment? Okay. So 3445 Stone Lane in Steamboat Springs. I'm elected city council elect. I'll get sworn in next Tuesday. And I'm, you don't know, I'm a strong housing advocate. I believe that is hurting our viability or the community. And I look forward to working closely with you, in the coming 4 years. Taking Dakota's seat. Let's move to Dakota.
Not necessarily on the board yet.
I'm not, I won't, this isn't necessarily.
In the district.
We won't know that in January.
District 3 seat.
Yes, but I'm the elect for District 3.
Right.
No.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, board member comment, and I would just like to say that there are, in December, we are going to be having the last meeting of some of our board members. And Dakota, I know you're leaving this month, but I would like to ask if you could come back so we could properly say thank you to you and all the staff on the board. Do you think you can do that? Or if you had prepared comments, go ahead.
I'm happy to wait if that's better.
You can do both.
I will take that opportunity then. I won't, I didn't really prepare anything, just wanted it to be from the heart, but just wanted to say how much of an honor it's been to serve with you all. It's been so impactful on me as an individual. I've learned so much about what it takes to really make a difference in our community. It's not easy. It comes with a lot of challenges, and something that I learned along the way is that if you're getting a lot of pushback, that means that you are changing the status quo. So hopefully for the better, right? And I think that we've done a lot of great work in the last 3 years, 2 years. I don't know how long I've been on this board now. The time has flown, but I just want to thank you all for being such an impact on me. And I'm so proud of all the work that we've gotten to do together. Wish I could stick around for more, but I know you're gonna continue to do amazing things in our community. And I do have little thank you notes, but I'll wait till the end to give them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dakota.
Thank you.
Catherine, you had your hand up and then Lou.
Yeah, I would remind everyone that Lift Up is collecting turkeys for families in our community for the holiday season. And they are still short 500 turkeys. So if anyone has an opportunity, City Market has them on sale, I think so does Safeway. Just buy a turkey, run it out to their food bank, and just encourage everyone to help support Lift Up and our family holidays.
Thank you.
As I think everyone received an email from Emily regarding lessons learned, comments about associated with Cottonwoods. Would really appreciate it if you could respond to that as quickly as possible. It's part of a process of we're trying to incorporate in terms of doing a lessons learned evaluation on all of our projects so that we can hopefully avoid some missteps in the future and make it more efficient to produce affordable housing.
And that deadline is
Sunday.
Sunday. All right, so we have homework. Yes,
Thanks for sending that out. I appreciate it.
Steve.
On December 18th, we will be interviewing Housing Authority Board applicants. I believe there's 6 total seats, including some incumbents who are running, some who are leaving, and an open seat. I believe there's 6 total.
Right.
And I would like to make sure that we really have good representation from the community in the areas that, or the expertise that we want and need on the board. So I would urge everyone in here to, folks, get the word out, especially around the expertise that we're looking for on this board. And whether that has to deal with, real estate or finance or HR, whatever we believe those to be. I think it's important that when we interview, go through that process, that it's very clear that these are some of the areas of expertise that we'd really like to have on the board, and especially if there's gaps there. So.
Piggybacking on that, the executive team did have a little conversation about what's the skill sets that we're looking for. Those are finance and development, property management. Communication, thank you. And then as sort of just a standard with that, within all of that is a connection to the problem we're trying to solve, whether that's you represent an organization that works with people who deal with housing insecurity, you yourself have experienced housing insecurity. It's really important for us to pair technical expertise with a connection to the problem that we're trying to solve. And so those are the kind of categories.
Yeah, and I would ask that, if you don't mind, sending out an email, those categories to those of us who are in the interviewing process.
Okay.
There's 3 county commissioners, myself, Amy Dixon, and Gail Fury.
Great.
I would also
We
be,
typically do that as a. Okay, thank you, we'll do that. Yes.
I'd also be curious to know if there's a recommendation from the executive committee on whether you want to keep the board at this number. Or, should we fill all the seats, or do we want to look at a different size board?
Your bylaws are 7 to 15, is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct. Any other board comment? All right, if not, we'll move to the consent agenda. And that is the October minutes, both the meetings, our regular and our special. Write-offs, which there were none, the check register and the financial statements. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Kathy.
Sorry? Mark?
In Jason's director comments, he talked about referencing at a meeting indicating the value of the property was 17.5 million. And phase 1 was put at 6 million, leaving a value of 11.5 million for phase 2. In a recent development meeting, we were told that a appraisal that Alpine Bank had from June of 24 put the value of phase 2 at 8.7. So that's 3 million less than the value above. Where did the value of 17.5 million?
Is this a question about the,
Minutes? Or is this question about Cottonwoods?
This is the question. It has to do, I mean, it all gets tied in with our.
But the minutes represent what was said a month ago. So could we talk about that when we get to the director's report?
Or is
It's
it,
fine.
yeah,
Okay,
or Kathy, or is that a question mark you're asking about the balance we have in our financial statements? That would be a question for the September financials. Is that what you're asking?
Well, we can discuss it at another time,
Okay.
but also in the minutes, it referenced and I forgot where this reference was, but it referenced the Alpine Bank loan as a 4% loan, and it's a $4 million loan. So that is a correction in the minutes.
And
Which
we-
set,
I was gonna say, well, what page and what reference?
It was in all these minutes that.
All right, if you'll get with Sarah so she can find the reference.
Okay.
I can probably just figure that out.
Okay,
So the correction is that it's a 4 million rather than a 4%.
Correct, that's it.
Okay.
all right. Any other corrections or questions about the minutes? Or the other items on the consent agenda?
I guess Kathy, I do have a question on the financial statement then. Is our September financial statement, our September balance sheet is the value we have for the Cottonwoods property, correct? Or do we need to adjust that?
The expense the Cottonwoods last year, the land, when we realized we weren't going to get it back and we audited this. To do it that way.
They were too expensive, so we have to have a balance sheet. When, I'm sorry, Sandy, when you say last year, do you mean 2024? Do you mean 2025?
2024. All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended by Mark and Catherine. Was that a clarification or question?
There's a question, but I'll follow up with Sandy.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Lou and a second by Jim. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Let's clarify who's online. We've got Leah and who else?
Patrick.
All right. Thank you very much. Motion is approved as amended. Next, we'll move to staff reports. And I think Elliot's report is up first in the agenda.
Oh, yep. Afternoon.
Surprise.
So a few operational updates and some property updates for everyone. My first one, Steve already kind of touched base on with the board of directors. Vacant seats that are coming up. The deadline for applications is Sunday, November 23rd. If you're talking to folks in the community and encouraging them to put in an application. For the grant side of things, we've been invited to apply for $100,000 grant through the Upper Yampa River Water Conservancy District next month in December. So if successful, this will go towards covering a little bit of the gap on water and sewer at Whitehaven. So we're very excited about getting an opportunity to apply for that. We should be hearing back in January of 2026 whether we got that additional money. And then we've also submitted an application to CHAFA for their Drive at Home program, which I think, that's things have changed on that here in the last couple of days. So maybe that's not as relevant anymore as it was when I wrote my report last week. I wanted to let the board know we've provided notices for rent increases at YVHA properties. So those have been posted at Whitehaven and Fish Creek. Just letting the board know, we've heard from one tenant at Fish Creek about the increase, and we've heard from one tenant at Whitehaven. We've had a chance to speak with them and follow up, and I think their concerns have been addressed. But I wanted to let the board know, and I'll continue to update the board as we hear back from tenants as we get any additional feedback. And then Kate let us know that she's received comments back from 2 tenants at Hillside Village about the increase there. And she's spoken to them and think they're in a good spot as well as far as what we're looking at for the $28 a month rent increase at Hillside Village. Cottonwoods, a lot of activity going on with the HOA. We've gotten the bylaws and all of our other collection policies back from George. I've circulated those to Steamboat Asset Management, also to Steamboat Partners attorneys, and they've provided some comments and updates and edits to those. Still waiting on the declaration and anticipating getting that back kind of early next week. And then had a call just earlier today with Landmark, and we'll be submitting our condo plat to the city next Friday. And everything is in good shape on that. Thanks to Lala for helping out with getting parking and carport assignments updated there. So there's no questions from them on that. So we're in good shape. The property management team has recently conducted several property walks at Alpenglow and the reserves and Sunlight Crossings, as well as Anglers. Specific.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Uh-huh.
So I saw this in your report, but then in the minutes from the property management team meeting, it said specifically for the anglers that like the list of problems continues to grow.
Yep.
So I just wanted to clarify the discrepancy between things are well at hand and, sorry, not at Alpenglow, not at Anglers, that at Alpenglow that things have been improved or they're not.
Yeah, so this is specific to Alpenglow and Sunlight.
So at Alpenglow, things have improved.
That was the feedback, correct, yep. And so with the reserves and Anglers, there's still quite a few of open items that we've had on there for going back for about 1.5 years now that we've notified them about. So they've OPG and Mission Rock have received our updates and reports. Addressed this with them on our monthly call last Friday, and basically they've got some new management. So they have a property manager at each of the 3 properties now. Mission Rock does, Anglers, the reserves, and Alpenglow. And there's also been some change in management of the regional person who oversees these 3 properties from Mission Rock. So it was a very good conversation. They're going to start incorporating some of these items into their work order reports to start addressing. So I'll continue to update the board on how things are progressing with that, if there's any progress being made. But the feedback was that specifically Alpenglow and Sunlight Crossings were in really good shape, comparatively speaking.
Clarification. Do you think the actual property owners and managers would have moved forward without us pressing them?
I mean, just my own take on that, no.
Okay.
No.
Diane, regarding Alpenglow, is there any update on them getting access to the 24/7 access? The little reference they promised in their proposal chapter.
Yeah, so they've received proposals on that, and they're both they came back kind of lower than what they anticipated. So they're working on contracting that work with a local kind of handyman or subcontractor over the winter, and they're anticipating getting that access in place sometime like first quarter of 2026. So that is moving forward. Yes. From a communication standpoint, we've sent out the pricing announcement on October 31st via press release, and also posted it on our website. And what the new pricing is with the $10 million of STR money that we received from the city. We've received we have a 35% open rate on that. And then we've also reached out to the Northwest Colorado Health Partnership and the Chamber of Commerce and provided that information to them as well. And then just something from John that he wanted to bring up, trying to get an idea of how many board members are accessing the YVHA board portal, and kind of looking at who's been logging in. It looks like hardly anyone's using it. So just seeing if there's even a need for that. If not, I think kind of talking about Blair about taking it down. So I don't think it's anything we need to discuss now, but maybe we'll circulate an email to the board, and if people aren't using that, maybe we'll just take that feature away. And then there's some statistics in here on various ad campaigns that have been conducted over the last month, and engagement, and anyway, let me know, or John know, if you have any questions on that. And then from a property standpoint, Mid-Valley, Houseman was able to get all the paving completed prior to the end of October, which was, a critical path item for us receiving a TCO this winter when buildings 1 and 2 are completed. So they're working hard on getting drywall, cabinets, doors, base and case, and electrical trim, including light switches and lights installed right now. Was on site last week. We conducted a kind of a pre-punch walkthrough of a couple units to set the standard of what those will look like. And I'm happy to report that the couple units we looked at were very dialed in. Myself, Tim Sabo with Steamboat Partners was part of that walkthrough. Very happy with how the units are looking. So we've kind of set the standard on what our expectations are with the units and how they should be turned over to us prior to punch list. And so I think that was a good meeting. We also went through all the exterior punch list items, looking at siding, balconies, masonry work, and have also set the standards for those exterior items as well. We've got siding, hopefully finishing up here shortly on building 1. And they're also working on some core trail stuff and the emergency access road off Highway 40, and are looking to get the core trail open back up to pedestrian traffic here in another week to 10 days. And then we've also been provided with new delivery dates for buildings 2 is February 15th, and March 20th for building 1 is what we're looking at for TCO and turnover of those 2 buildings. So
Is that a little delayed? than what we were expecting?
it is a little bit delayed. I think building 2 has slid just a hair. It was around the first part of February is what they were saying about 6 weeks or so ago. Building 1 has been pushed back because of the lightning strike this summer, and just trying to refocus all the subs on getting building 2 called up there. So their plan is basically from what they've communicated, they think they can deliver building 1 sooner than March 20th. Once they get kind of building 2 in a good spot, they're going to redirect all their resources to building 1 and try to catch that schedule up by a week or 2. So I think, at least from what they're communicating, that's worst case scenario right now is March 20th for building 1.
And I really appreciate the follow-up on the property management. Circle back to that for a second. So sounds like, we're hoping that things will improve on those other properties. I guess my concern is, what will we do? What's our boundary with them if things don't start improving by a certain deadline?
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot at the property management team meetings. I know Catherine's brought that up many times. I think our plan would be continue to using our leverage, our relationships with like YVHA, locally, trying to do more like from a staffing level to help out with cleanup days or providing some resources for them. But it's kind of a tough situation because we don't have a ton of options or things to do to affect change there. But I'd say those are like 2 things that we've talked about at the staff level and property management team level to get things moving there.
Are we still looking at potentially using our resources to work on the landscaping or whatever it was that, you know, was concerning, if they weren't gonna progress.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about that. We discussed that with them this summer, but the indications that they've given us is that it's not really a financial problem, like the cash flows with the property aren't really an issue. So we've kind of backed off that a little bit. I think the big piece of it was staffing. They've essentially were working with one property manager and one maintenance person since about June. And and so part of that too is that Mission Rock has also been utilizing more of their resources from Denver and the Front Range. They've had a maintenance guy that's been coming up for like 2 weeks at a time to help kind of get caught up on work orders, get caught up on maintenance around the properties. So he's been coming up for like a 2-week stint and then leaving for a week and coming back for another 2 weeks. The lady that's replaced the other regional person has also been up here a lot more. So she's had a bigger presence in Steamboat. The other things that I'm seeing from the conversation is Erin is the head of asset management for OPG, but her kind of second in command, Jenna, she's been up here to Steamboat kind of 3 times just in the last 2 months. So she's coming up more as well and kind of checking on things and making sure progress is being made on these items. So, and, you know, in our conversation with OPG, you know, Erin indicated that these properties aren't to their standards. And on the monthly call, she's, you know, indicated that things are getting better, but they're still not to their standards. And so it seems like there's more of a buy-in from OPG on this, and we're getting more resources dedicated to the properties from Mission Rock. So it looks like things are moving in a more kind of positive direction, but I think we're going to still need to kind of continue to lean on them and check in and make sure these things are happening. So
Leah, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to follow up on what Elliot was saying. You know, I think from the property management team perspective, it's really critical that we monitor the staffing that they have. It's wonderful that they've managed to fill these positions, but as we know, they have trouble retaining their staff. So hopefully these changes in the regional manager and then, you know, more active oversight on our part to ensure that the staffing that they have hired is retained, I think will hopefully lead to the results that we're looking for in the physical building envelope.
Catherine.
Thanks, Elliot. Your reports are always so informative. I appreciate them. Circling back to the tenants who expressed concerns regarding rent increases, I'm guessing we advise them we have that fund if they need extra assistance, or any of those that tapping into that funds, or those funds are applying for it for assistance, or?
I do not know specifically if these people that we've recently spoken with are going to tap into those funds, but they are aware that they're available. Alyssa reached out to Lift Up recently, and we have a report I'm kind of happy to share with you. I can send it to you, but it shows like who for Alpenglow, Anglers, Fish Creek, Hillside Village, Reserve, and Sunlight, how many tenants have reached out to them with assistance and the dollar amount that's been kind of given to them per property. And, you know, of the 6 properties here listed, our 3 properties have the least amount of like people that have reached out and the least dollar amount of assistance that's been given to them. So, yeah, I'll forward that to you so you have that information.
Thank you. Another thing I wanted to comment on, this may be something we could just, is more appropriate to discuss during the lottery implementation finding and such. But on the communication side, I noticed on our website when I was looking at the Cottonwoods, you know, messaging, it didn't really seem very prominent that we had that down payment assistance money. I know that we sort of back in through the website, it says resources, but when you actually have Cottonwoods,
I was gonna make a friendly suggestion that he's really pop out. Because there are people who may feel there's no hope even in applying, they don't have that down payment. Yet we got that grant from Prop 123, so as a friendly suggestion, I think we need to make that more prominent. And then this is another communications question, is I'm perplexed that, and you guys are doing a great job on the community price decreases, that the paper didn't cover it. I mean, any other mountain community in the country would have a big article with the schematics, the exact pricing, and I don't want to get into whatever political goals of the paper, but we're not getting, we need help with our local media to get this message out there, because I'm concerned that we've got these prices lower, yet there's still a lot of people in the community that don't know about it and don't know that the DPA is available. So it's a question, I know you sent that press release to the paper, but maybe this is the case where we need to have like Kathy or, whoever sit down with the paper and say, you guys realize what an amazing opportunity this is and help us get the word out. So just a question, I'm just so perplexed that there's been no coverage on it.
The one that I'm a little surprised hasn't picked it up, although he's been away for quite a long time, is Dylan with Bugle. And I sent him a follow-up note after the release went out, just kind of check in with him. I mean, the pilot is the pilot.
That's why I wondered if maybe since even like Shannon had something,
Yeah.
but it didn't have a lot of detail, and I know we've got that little flip book
Yeah.
thing, and that's not my personal preference on sharing information,
Mhm.
but maybe we need to sit down and talk with these guys and say, like, maybe they're focusing on the 10 million. It is just perplexing that we've got that night of the Beagle, that we haven't had any detailed coverage of something. The first affordable for sale properties we've had in 30 years, Kathy?
Yeah.
20.
Can we have Alyssa give maybe an update on? Well, you're gonna do that in the lottery and so if you can hold, we're gonna cover exactly what all our numbers are and how many people we're touching and all that. And I think you'll be much more relieved.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Okay. All right, any other questions of Elliot's report? All right, then we'll move to Jason's report.
All right, on Cottonwoods, a couple things that I'm sure you guys are curious about what the status is. The global agreement that you guys approved in October, we're doing the final cleanup. We're circulating a quote unquote clean draft of that amongst the partners to make sure that that is in fact clean. We'll do a final review internally as well, once everybody said, yes, this is the agreement. And that should be ready for signature, I'm hoping next. The one critical piece inside of that global agreement is the philanthropic loan, the $5 million philanthropic loan. We had originally worked with the community foundation for that loan. They've suggested that we work directly with the donor, of which that's what we've been doing over the course of the last couple of weeks. We have traded a term sheet. I believe I emailed that to everybody. And so we are currently just working through that term sheet so we can finalize the loan. We have a verbal commitment that they intend to make that loan, but we obviously don't have all the paperwork. And so this is becoming more critical to the success of the project as we're getting further along in the draws of our construction loan, the infrastructure loan, and essentially you're getting to a place where we need some of that liquidity to be able to keep construction going. So we're working, Elliot and I are working with the donor to get that going, and ideally that money flowing to us first week in December, so that we can maintain liquidity for the project and continue everything on its proper course.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Is that okay? Thank you for the email response. My first question is, I think that we had originally been understanding this was gonna be recoverable or forgiven, like some kind of a grant, but now it's a 24-month 0% repayment of the $5 million. So I wanna understand, that seems like a pretty material change to go from thinking that it was a grant we wouldn't have to pay back to a loan that we do. So would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then the other thing I saw, it seems like in the executive committee meeting, you all discussed this, but just for the whole board, what is the relationship between this $5 million loan and the Alpine Bank loan?
Yeah. So we had originally approached the donor and the community foundation with a loan. When the community foundation got involved, they said, this is better as a grant, a recoverable grant potentially, or a forgivable loan. And of course we were like, yeah, that sounds excellent. And so we went down that road a little bit, but the donor was very specific with the community foundation and with us that they wanted this to be a loan. And so that's the route that we're going down. We had some, I would say we had some hope at one point in time that it would be a grant. When we were working directly with the community foundation on this, but that unfortunately wasn't able to be executed. And so the result of that is there will be, we're working on this loan. It will be a $5 million loan that's subordinate to the $4 million Alpine Bank loan that's encumbered by or collateralized by the land, the phase 2 land. And so that gets a little bit to Mark's question that he was alluding to earlier about what is the value of that land. We have two different appraisals that say two different things about what the value of that land might be. And so does that answer your question?
So is getting the Alpine loan contingent on this $5 million private donor loan going through?
So the $4 million loan on phase 2 already exists. This makes things just slightly more complicated. There is another $4 million Alpine Bank loan that's essentially an expansion of the existing $29 million construction loan. So it'd make it a $33 million construction loan that is contingent upon this loan.
Aha.
So ultimately what is going to go into this project is about $9 million more in liquidity to pay all of the construction invoices. That, all told, probably, with what's remaining in the existing loans, maybe $12-ish million of work to be paid for. That will be paid back by the original $29 million loan plus the 4 is paid back by the sales at Cottonwoods. The $4 million infrastructure loan and the $5 million philanthropic loan will remain an encumbrance on phase 2 and will be a cost that we have to incur when we basically source and create the development for phase 2.
Talk to me through, how does that factor with the 24-month repayment period in the term sheet?
And the 90-day developer selection.
So the 2-year period was functionally, I think, the time period that we were talking with them that this gets the 90-day period to select a new developer partner and the 2-year term are kind of based in the same concept, which is the donor wants to see action. They want to see phase 2 move forward and start. And so the terms that are in the term sheet are intended to drive that action. Have YVHA go through the process of bringing on a new developer partner quickly. And secondarily, not wait around, if you will, and get a project going. So both of those are based in that desire to see swift action on the execution of phase 2.
And I think it needs to be said that both of those loans are being moved to phase 2 because work on phase 2 has already taken place. And those costs were they were incurred on the phase one project. So
When you,
that's why the money is being,
when you say both of those loans, you're referring to the 4
4 million and
million,
the 5 million.
the 4 million from Alpine and the 5 million that's the
From donor.
donor loan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess maybe the question to ask, the incentivization tactics make a ton of sense, but the means behind performing against those, especially on the 24-month repayment period, that feels a little less undefined. And like, what are the default risks of if we can't meet that?
So I haven't seen the paperwork of the loan yet to find out what the remedies are. And so I don't know the answer to that. But it is the concern that 24 months is not enough time.
How will we pay that? If we are, like, we're not gonna be out of the ground putting people in units in 24.
So the takeout of those loans would be in the construction loan for phase 2.
So that's,
So that's
it doesn't have to be us paying them back.
right, yeah.
Okay.
So long as it gets paid
It
back.
can be a piece of the performa, whoever comes in.
Yes, and the other alternative, and this is sort of the worst case scenario, is that we have to sell the land. And this again gets back to Mark's question about what's the value of that land. The appraisal is obviously an estimate of what the value of that land is. We have two different appraisals, one that was done by the developer, Lone Tree, that estimated the value of phase 2 land to be 11 million. The appraisal that was done by Alpine Bank estimates it to be 8.7. So if you take the more conservative of the two estimates, there would potentially be a scenario where we can't get a project going. We have to sell that land and it sells for less than the debt. In that case, we would have to put our own cash into making that whole. So we would get the proceeds from the sale, whatever that is, 8 million, say, but we owe 9, we would need to put $1 million of our own money into that.
Do we have the ability to sell the land when it was donated?
We do have the ability to sell it.
I didn't mean to jump in front of you.
That was the exact question. I guess it helps when the donor's the same person, but that was my question.
And that's what I was saying, going back to Mark's question earlier, so we could, so basically, I'll take the bank's appraisal over the developers. So right now, we have a negative debt to equity ratio. And so Sandy, I think we're gonna have, and Paul, I think we've got a negative ratio on that, we need to cut that.
No, land is carried at cost.
So,
Land is carried at cost. You recognize the fair market value when you sell
And so there could be a potential loss on sale or
Yeah.
gain on sale.
it. Yeah, land is carried at cost. It's not depreciated. It's not adjusted to market.
we need to be aware of that, because if we are underwater on it.
Keenly aware.
Well, I mean, we're underwater based on an appraisal from June of 24.
Yeah.
I think that appraisal is too low, so there's a couple of other options. One is you get a different appraisal that creates positive equity in the land. Another is that you negotiate an extension of it. If you just needed some extra time. And you might get stuck, if the market changed, you might have to, and you couldn't get an extension, you have to sell it potentially at a loss, but the question is really valid. Because the housing authority does not have that cash to pay that back. So it's a legitimate question, it's a legitimate concern. Excuse me. I've commented at the development meeting that this supposed 90-day requirement to get a development partner for phase 2 is, at the minimum, in my opinion, something that we should not attempt to do. We're examining this whole process of how to pick a development partner. And I don't want to be, I don't want the housing authority to be, I don't want to be in a position where we're forced to do that. We've already made one mistake. We picked the wrong development partner for the Cottonwoods, and I suspect, I wasn't around then, but I suspect that it was a similar process. That.
I don't know, just to respond to that, I would say you're totally fair in coming to the assessment that we picked the wrong development partner, given the information at this time, but we did not rush that process when we started that, and I've looked to Bob for you to back up.
I
'cause
wasn't there,
we
so
didn't
I'm just,
know at that time.
but if we did it.
It wasn't because it was rushed.
If we did 90 days to pick one now, it would be a rush.
Yes.
It does not provide adequate time to do due diligence. It doesn't provide adequate time to find somebody and then to evaluate whether he's gonna work, whether the architect that he wants to use works. It just is not an adequate time. And so if the donor is actually requiring that, then I think we need to talk to the donor and explain why that is not a smart thing to do.
I believe that is, and Elliot, correct me if I'm wrong, that is one of the topics of discussion with the donor.
Well, I'm just putting it out there because it's been stated. And I want people to know that it's not a foregone conclusion by everybody in the room.
And I just want to clarify that my correction about the process of selecting Lone Tree does not mean that I'm not in agreement with you on the 90-day being a very small window of time to select an partner.
Is the sense here that the donor is like amenable to having conversation and working through some of these terms? I mean, just know you're saying like this is becoming more critical that this loan goes through. So we're not in a position of enormous leverage, but this donor is receptive to feedback, like, 90 days sets us up for not being in an ideal position with respect to choosing a developer.
For sure. And to be honest, to be clear, I wrote the term sheet and I proposed 90 days. So it was, we were responding to their sentiment that they want to see fast action. That was fast. Sounds like it's too fast. And we can talk.
So the donor's not actually asking for that. That came from you.
That came from us. I mean, they're asking for swift action. In my opinion, in a term sheet, you need to have things that are measurable. So I put a date, number of days in there.
Mark, what is it?
Well, then
What is a reasonable time frame? 90 days is unreasonable. What
6
is
to 9 months.
6 to 9 months?
To really, to not make these continued mistakes. This is, it's really in depth to figure out. I mean, I wouldn't select a development partner and then say, okay, here, you just go do it. The next time around, I'd say that we would be, at least if I was here, we'd be intimately involved with the process of estimating it, of the process of picking an architect, with the process of picking a contractor, and with the process of evaluating the land. In this case, the land that we have has a lot of soils issues, which creates a tremendous additional cost. And there's ways around that through design. The 2 buildings that we have that are already designed, that could be built, they're already approved by planning. Both of them have to have significant design revision. If we utilize the condo portion of it, the foundation has to be significantly redesigned to actually reduce the cost of the soils issue that is out there. And so this takes time. And then you go through that, and then what's the market at the time that you want to look at this? Is the market still strong? Is it stupid strong like it is today? Or has it changed? And so the financials may not work. So this takes time And I would say 6 to 9 months is more like. And I would also like to. It'd be a whole lot better. I think that the rule that we're advertising for developers is a housing authority rule. I don't think it's a state rule, I think it's a county rule. I think that we would be better off negotiating, finding a developer that has a history of success, finding contractors that have a history of success, and negotiating with them. People get worried about that, and sometimes you might pay us a slight more premium in terms of cost, but you're gonna get, my experience is you get a dramatic improvement in terms of production. You get a dramatic improvement in terms of quality of both the design and the contractor and the developer. And so there's a lot of issues and a lot of concerns that need to be looked at and addressed, and develop a plan to proceed with the next one and not just say we're doing this 90 days.
And what's the impact of a 6 to 9 month timeframe around finding a developer?
Well, the practical, I would say there's one speculative impact and there's one practical impact. The practical impact is that, if it takes 6 to 9 months to find a developer partner, you're very unlikely to hit a 2027 construction start. It doesn't mean you're completely foreclosed on the ability to do that, but it makes that process more difficult. Or makes that prospect less likely. The speculative impact is that may not be an acceptable timeline to the donor. And so we're balancing needs here. We also have a desire to deliver product, and so I think all of these things are going to have to be balanced. It's not, unfortunately, it's probably not as simple as, take 9 months.
What is the contingency plan if this donor falls through?
At the moment, we do not have a contingency plan. It would either be, we don't have I should say, a solid contingency plan. It would be some other type of either bank or private loan.
I was under the impression that, we're trying to do our due diligence as a good partner to help fill the gap, but if we can't do that, then it kind of comes back to the developer.
Yeah, I think,
Yes.
yeah, we're losing track of there's a donor issue. We have to satisfy the donor's need. We're trying to understand what that need is in terms of determining what expedient start is. Those are part of discussions that are currently taking place. The issue of, what is a fallback position? We can fall back on our current contract with our partner, and we will then probably go to litigation. That's a fallback.
Wow.
It's not.
I don't know if that's a
forecast.
I don't know if that's a foregone conclusion,
No,
but
it's
it would be challenging for, I would say this. I think you're 4 or 5 steps ahead of what's the likely scenario is if we go back to our partners and say, we couldn't get this money, you guys need to source it. They are going to have a tough time doing that because they know that money can't be repaid. Now, they may say, hey, we're happy to give you a loan. And we may be in a position of having to take that. But it is the philanthropic loan is by far our best option. And the fallback would likely be some type of private loan. It may be with our existing developer partner that we're not necessarily super excited about. I doubt they would be willing to bring additional capital to the project because they know it can't be repaid.
I have one other question for this board, and that is this board ready to commit to a certain amount of time to find a developer to go to this donor with? A minimum amount of time. That's the big issue with the donor. 90 days is too short. If we all agree with that, then what direction is this board gonna give around this donor?
Hand up too.
I was gonna ask a very similar question to Steve. I appreciate Mark's thoughts and comments on time frame, and I understand where Jason was coming from in expediency, but it would be helpful for me to hear from other development team members about what they think is a reasonable amount of time.
That's fine. And the other reason for the time is, again, to avoid what we're going through today. This was not as thorough an examination as it should have been. In this case, was missed the fact that this developer's partners, and the contractor have multiple other projects together. And so they have a desire to maintain a relationship with themselves. And that's contributing to some of the problems we're having. But it would be nice to, when you negotiate, you better numbers, and hopefully we'd avoid what we've got right now, which is about between a $5 and a $6 million. That's what you're gonna avoid by taking the time to do this and do it well.
We're not in a position to make any decisions today, and anything one, I want to remind everyone that it's really important to fill out the questionnaire about what went right and what went wrong with Cottonwoods, which is going to be on next month's agenda. And also, the project needs a $5 million loan. And so we will continue to negotiate with the donor partner, because they are our best option, not our only. So I'm again looking at the clock, and I know that we have some other things, and we have some people on the line that are going to be advising us on other items that we have coming up on the agenda. So if it's all right, we're going to continue the discussion at the construction team, the development team, and any debt would have to be approved by the board. So you will have more opportunity to express your opinions. So.
Jason, do you want direction from the board before you continue the term sheet?
Well, we'll work directly on coming up with something that, we as the staff, know what that type of process can look like. We can work with the development team on perfecting that process, and then working with the donor to kind of get that timeline correct in the term sheet. So.
His hand up too, Kathy.
Pardon?
Patrick had his hand up.
Oh, Patrick. Sorry, we haven't heard from you, and he's a member of the development team.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be brief. I think the way Jason just summarized it probably is correct. But I think that the process has, number one, this is the most important decision we're going to make on phase two. I think, and I completely agree with Mark that we need to do it carefully, and we learned a lot from the last go round. But it's a process that's going to take some time. I would suggest maybe when we talk with the donor that we establish a clearer understanding of the process. There's the initiation of the developer recruitment process. That's a target date. There's the issuance of an RFP. There's the interviews. I think if we can kind of break it down into tasks or segments, and then have perhaps an end date that is very consistent with what Mark said. Maybe it's 9 months to get to a draft developer agreement, but it shouldn't take that long to identify vet and select a developer. It could take a lot longer then to get to a development agreement, but I think breaking it down by phase or segment or task and talking with the developer in that way might be more productive and helpful. But it's critically important that we do this right. And we also recognize that there's a lot of external or exogenous factors that we're going to have to deal with as well, notably the market and the economy and interest rates.
Sorry, can I just have one, just to clarify where we're all kind of landing feeling wise on this? It's not that the donor has set some unreasonable or unmeetable expectation. It's just that you're hearing feedback from the board to go back with a timeline that's more appropriate. So we don't need to feel like this is doomed. This is a doomed deal by any means. It's just educating and putting a more reasonable date. And you don't have any proof at this point that that wouldn't be an acceptable change.
Right.
All right, then we're gonna move on and let Jason finish and update us on the Forest Service parcel.
Yes, this is only just very quick, does not need to have much discussion. Is that we are working with our funding team, DA Davidson, and our bond counsel, Corey Kalanick, had tapped to prepare red lines of the Forest Service lease and get those to the Forest Service. Essentially, we've done more due diligence on the lease, and it is, at least in the opinion of our funding team, unfinanceable. And therefore, we need to make some changes to it to make it financeable before we would recommend that the city approve it and then assign it to YVHA. So we are working through that process. We have, obviously the government just opened back up, so we'll see what that timing looks like. There is an alternative to that we are also simultaneously exploring, which would be a potential purchase of the site, which can be done under existing authorizations, would not require an act of Congress. We're exploring that as an option because then we would own it fee simple, and that would be quite easy to create a development on. So there's nothing more to really talk about at this point. This will be a topic for a future board meeting. The development team is working on this kind of in the background. So that's the update there. And then lastly, on the Bear River project, you guys probably saw an email from me yesterday. We were not able to essentially get the property under contract. You all had approved a contract. They wanted a kind of a shorter due diligence period. That didn't work for us. And instead of acquiescing to a longer due diligence period, they said, we're gonna explore a different option. So that project is no longer in the works. That does not mean it won't come back around at some point in the future. But it does mean that for now, Bear River sort of off the table.
What does that mean for the land banking grant? Can we apply those if we're successful with something else?
No, the land banking grant was tied specifically to that parcel and that development proposal, so we're withdrawing that grant. Actually, we didn't ever submit it because one of the requirements was to submit an executed purchase sale agreement. So that's a non-issue, but we did submit the Yampa Drive at Home financing application, so we are withdrawing that.
Yeah, I mean, just for clarification, we requested information from the potential development partner. And in addition to putting items in the revised sale agreement that we did not agree with, they also did not provide the information that we were looking for. So they were just, there's something else going on there.
About the hilltop, do we have any timeline associated with when we'll hear back on the red lines?
No, we're working on a memo that essentially explains all of the major issues with the lease and then proposed solutions. And then starting with the local contacts and see where that goes.
Can I make a quick comment? It might be a question for future follow-up, but I'm a little concerned that we've gotten to the point of mailing the neighbors notification that we're gonna start a development project in their backyard, and we are still working through the details of the lease that we're now finding to be unworkable financially. And so I don't know if that's not as big of a deal as it seems. I just feel like the cart got a little bit before the horse. And if the backstop here is that YVHA purchases the property, that also feels like a very major decision that I don't think we've discussed as a board. So again, maybe more comment than question, but I have some concerns about just process and doing due diligence prior to getting to a point of informing people that we're engaging in a project that we're now finding materially might not be tenable.
Yeah, the reason why we did outreach was the fact that there was gonna be equipment on site, and there was equipment on site. And so to get ahead of those types of questions of, hey, what's going on? What is it? Why were there backhoes? Why were there drill rigs out there? Why are surveyors out there? We decided to be proactive in our communication to say, hey, this is a project that we're exploring. This is a project that we think is potentially viable. Heads up, there will be people out on the site. And we'd like to have future conversations with you guys about.
I get that. I mean, I think that I appreciate the impulse to be proactive in communicating. My bigger concern is about like appropriate due diligence, like not getting out over our skis on projects. And so to me, this feels like it has flavors of that I think maybe warrant unpacking, and maybe you're doing this in the development working group, that's fine. I just wanted to raise the comment that it seems like some steps were maybe missed to where we're at the point that we are at now, with the lease not being able to move forward, but the fallback option is a YVA purchase of property, which seems significant and I don't think has been discussed at a board level, or at least it hasn't in my recollection. So
We've been working on this for at least 2 years with Servitas.
5 years.
Yeah,
2 years, 2 years.
2 years with Servitas and going back 5 years with the Forest Service. So there hasn't been anything to report because we haven't been able to move forward with any sort of lease. So at such time as we pivot, we will bring back all the facts. Okay, thank you.
Jess, that's a good point. I do think though, with the people, with the community's concern about housing authority not being transparent enough, I do think just having equipment on that property might have concerned the neighbors without a heads up.
Yes.
And so I think it's a balance, like Jason said. I will say that, just to remind everyone, the government is only funded through January 30th. So if there is anything we want to get done, there's a very realistic possibility we could be in another shutdown at the end of January. So I know the Forest Service, it's hard to get them on a timeline, but we could be, as I said, the government is only funded for the next couple of months. A fun reminder.
All right. Any other questions of Jason on his report? Then we will move, and there's been a request to switch items 6 and 7 and move into our budget hearing and presentation. And we also have
Wendy, are you still out there?
Wendy.
I am.
So do you want to start with the, if we can, the recommendations on the public consultants as far as personnel?
Yes, she's just gonna give us a quick rundown of the process.
Thanks for waiting, Wendy.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm kind of having a hard time hearing you, but I think that you're ready for me to present. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, Wendy Eklund with Graves Consulting. I might be familiar to a few of you. Kathy, hi. Dakota, hi. Just for the rest of you, I was the HR director for the city of Steamboat Springs for about 8 years under Gary Suter. So before I had to relocate, but Steamboat is near and dear to me. So I'm happy to be working with you all. I am going to just do a very brief presentation, and I am going to walk through it rather quickly. I realize you're on some time constraints, but I'm happy to elaborate or answer any questions at the end. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Very briefly about us, we are a full service HR consulting firm, but we really do specialize in public sector compensation and specifically here in Colorado. This is our tiny but mighty team, as I like to say. Lori, Tom Graves, and myself were the consultants on this project. I was the lead. I just told you briefly about me, so I'm not going to continue to talk about myself, but Lori and Tom worked with me behind the scenes. So when, the authority engaged us to do a compensation study, it's really to make sure that your employees are being paid fairly and competitively to the labor market that you all compete in, so that you can continue to retain the talent that you have, but also recruit talent that you may need. And I don't think any of us were anticipating the wage increases and the cost of living increases that happened since the pandemic. They just kind of skyrocketed more than anticipated. I think we kind of thought originally it was going to do the opposite. So it became even more important recently to make sure that the wages are keeping up. And so the good news is really the authority has done a very good job of maintaining their pay structure to be competitively aligned to the market. But there are positions that just move faster in the labor market than others. And this study really helps identify that. So we also look to maintain internal equity, and that just means positions with similar span and scope of responsibilities are properly aligned to other positions with similar span and scope of responsibilities, particularly if there's no great external benchmark for them. And then we do like to see career progression where that makes sense and sustainable wage growth at the top, so that when you have longer tenured employees, they can continue to see a little wage growth at that maximum of the range. So in order to accomplish all of that, we looked at compensation data from survey sources that I'll talk to here in just a second that reflect the larger labor market in which the authority competes. And then we provided recommendations to create or revise your current pay structure based on that data and placed positions on that structure based on that data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second as well. And then we also provide recommendations for implementing the structure and ongoing maintenance of that structure. So I did meet with leadership. I think this is a really important and key part of the process that we do, because as much as I know about positions in public sector and housing authorities, there's always some uniqueness. And that's the case with authorities. Some people wear multiple hats and you need to blend positions appropriately. And so once I understand all of that, then I know how to benchmark and match those jobs to the survey sources. So the survey sources that we used were pay factors. And you may be familiar, Employers Council used to push out a static report every year where you could have specific identifiable organizations, but they partnered with pay factors now, and they don't push out that static report. It's a regional cut of data now. I'll also talk to that in a second. And then we looked at CML also. So we look to determine a market average for every single position at the authority, and then age that data forward just a little bit to account for implementation in 2026. And that simply means that we know by the time we gather that data, by the time that the data was reported, and by the time that you all implement it, the data is already lagging just a little bit. So we want to carry it forward to 2026. So the data that we pull represents actual wages being paid to people doing similar work. So we're not just comparing pay ranges. And that's really key because we just don't have enough information with a pay range. We don't know when that pay range was established, for example. We don't know how a position was assigned to that pay range. So we really want to know what people are making doing that work. So we look at that. Sorry. I apologize. I've had a cold and my voice wavers a little bit, so I apologize. We then look to scrub the data or adjust the data. And that simply means, one, the blending of positions if there's dual roles, but also we know that leadership positions don't necessarily have the same downline of responsibility. They may not have as big of budgets. They might not have as many direct reports as some of the larger organizations included. So we scope adjust to account for that. this is the defined market that we used. And when I say define, we mean we looked at resort areas, obviously for the reasons that you're all in Steamboat Springs, right? We want to know what other resort areas compensation is looking like. But then we also included regional data from pay factors that I was talking to before. And there's really only 2 cuts of data from pay factors that you can pull. So it's either all of Colorado or Denver and surrounding metro. And we used Denver and surrounding metro because of the high cost of living in Steamboat. And we do that for other resort communities that we use as well, because it does influence the labor market elsewhere in the state. And the goal is really to create a large enough market to be statistically valid, because we need robust data. We don't want to just pick a handful of communities, largely because the wages that are reported are actual wages. So if you had a wage that was reported for a position where somebody's been in that career for 20 years, it's going to pull that data pretty high. But you might also have wages that are reported for people that are earlier in their career, and that's just going to pull the data too low. So we really want to look at a wider range of data to get to what we call that market average, which is what we consider a midpoint of a pay range. And the fun part is always the results, or at least in my opinion. Your current structure, the current pay structure, has unique pay ranges for each position. So every position says, here's what the pay range is for that specific position, and they're all kind of varied. And you have 11 steps for somebody to move through currently from min to max, and your ranges are 35% wide. So that just means to move from minimum to maximum is a 35% wide range. We restructured that pay structure. We put 17 pay grades into the structure. They each have equal distances of 8% between the midpoints. There are 3% increases per step, which I believe is what you currently have. But we also added 2 steps to the top to allow for sustainable wage growth, which created a 38% wide pay range. And I'm going to talk to that here on this next slide. I know this is kind of hard to read. It's hard to put it into one slide, but essentially what we did was we created 17 pay grades. We looked at the midpoint or the market average for each position, and we said this is the pay grade it should be assigned to. So for example, let's say a maintenance manager had a $77,000 market average, pay grade 400. It's closest to the mid of 400 at 75. That's how we determine what pay range that position should be assigned to. We also created equal distances of 8% at the mid. So grade 400 is 8% above the mid of grade 300. And we did that consistently throughout the structure. And the reason that we like to see that, and the reason that we do that instead of unique ranges, which is fine also, this just helps with consistent pay practices. So if you have a position that moves faster in the labor market and you need to upgrade it, or if you have a promotion or a position that needs reclassified, it helps with consistent pay practices on how you're going to move somebody up a pay grade, which really helps support the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. So that's why we did restructure that instead of unique pay ranges, just so you understand how we put positions on the structure and why we structured it the way we did. Sorry, my apologies. So I'm going to close this down for just a second. I'm happy to answer questions. I know I walked through that rather quickly, but this way I can see you all better and engage with you all better if you do have questions.
Any questions of Wendy? Yes.
This actually might be a question for you or for Sandy, and I apologize if I missed this, but can you remind me why we commissioned this study or where that directive came from?
In the past, we have done each different position every 3 years. They were all staggered. They were all over the place. They were done by different supervisors. And we felt it was time to standardize it. And we're going to do this year. And then Wendy said she would help us just kind of standardize the increase for the next 2 years and then possibly do it again. We're not going to do it every year. But I just felt it was important, and Elliot too, that we be consistent and that we have a professional do it instead of different supervisors.
Any other questions? Catherine?
Yeah, Wendy, thank you for doing this. Nice to see you again. Just a question. You're doing the comparisons with other communities. Do you look at the full payment package, such as including benefits, when you look at the comparisons?
No, that's a great question. That's actually a separate study. This is just true wages and not benefits, so it's not total awards. And it's become more difficult without a custom survey to really look at benefits and compare them, because Employers Council used to push out a report every year on benefits as well, and they stopped doing that. So we almost have to do custom surveys now. And I know a lot of people get survey fatigue, don't really want to fill them out. This truly just looked at wages and not total compensation.
And Catherine, we're gonna cover, we have a slide on benefits, don't we?
We did last month, this month,
Okay,
we're not gonna make
okay.
it.
In case you have any questions.
I compared us to the city and the county at your request, and I distributed it to
No,
everyone.
I was just wondering, based on Wendy's expertise in this field, since when people do look at in total, benefit, payment or salary packages, it includes benefits.
Yep.
So that's why I was just wondering if it's still relative to not look at the complete package when you're doing those comparisons in your survey, when that does make a difference in your survey numbers. Is just from your professional opinion. I mean, and I guess employment council is not doing that anymore, so it's harder, but do you still think it's an accurate representation of comparing salaries when you do not include the benefit package?
Yeah, I know that those are all great points and a great question. And again, these are wages. So it's really hard to determine what they're doing in addition to what they're paying people. This is a true account of salaries. I will say from our experience in talking to other organizations, especially the younger generations, but even some of us now, cost of living has increased so substantially that people don't look at the benefit piece of it as critically as they do the wages. They need money in their pockets right now. And so the total package has been less critical in recent years for that reason. It's still very important, especially when you're getting closer to retirement age and you need all that retirement contributions, but we're just seeing people wanting to be paid competitively regardless of the benefits.
And
It's
then
just kind of a sign of the times.
Okay, and even healthcare, because obviously with having good healthcare within an organization is critical, particularly if the ACA subsidies go.
Right.
All right, any other questions of Wendy? If not, thank you, Wendy, and
Wendy.
nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, Sandy, you want to move into the the slides that you prepared for the budget overview?
Yes. So hopefully you guys got a chance to look at these ahead of time. I'm not gonna go through every slide, but I do want to point out, this is our last meeting before we bring it back in December, where we have to approve it and submit the mill levy by the December 15th deadline. So today's the day. If you have any questions, just jump in, and I'm hoping to save some time for discussion at the end. Obviously, we need to take out the Bear River, so that's going to reduce the revenues and the expenses by 8 million. It's not going to change the bottom line. It's not going to change the fund balances. So when you look at these numbers, just keep in mind, let's see, we are expecting our budgeted revenue to be, without Bear River, about 15.3 million, to 5 million more than we're expecting to get this year, and that is mostly from loan proceeds, about 5 million, and 2 million in grants. We're also, this shows the revenue by category for 2025 and 2026. Another big thing that we're expecting in 2026 is the 1.8 million for the Cottonwoods Phase 1 developer fee and return of capital. 2026 will be the first year that we have real estate commissions We have over 5 million in loan proceeds from the Whitehaven project and the Hilltop. We saw this slide last month. There's just a couple changes here. We took out the Brown Ranch transfer of 180,000. Brown Ranch has a sufficient fund balance to cover their expenses for 2026. And we added in the $200,000 transfer to down payment assistance. And that's for the loans that don't fit within the geographical or AMI limits on the Prop 123 money. I do want to point out that this lists the grants, but the first one, the Cottonwoods, the 10 million in SDR funds that we're getting to buy down Cottonwoods prices. It's not, you're not going to see that in the budget. We don't expect the money to hit our bank accounts. Jumping to expenses.
So we do see the interest on the one.
Pardon?
We do see the interest on the one loan. On the Cottonwoods loan. The interest is in there on the form, on the Alpine Bank one.
Yeah, it is in there. The carrying amount for the $4 million loan.
They just clarified that. So
So yeah, we have 375,000 in there for the carrying on that loan. These are the expenses, a 10-year history. When we had significant capital outlays, we put those in orange. The expenses net capital outlay are in blue. They have a mean average growth rate of 19%. And we've listed all the capital outlays on the right. If I'm going too fast, stop me, but I'm just hitting the high points here. This is the expense by category. So obviously the capital outlay is the biggest. It's going to be reduced by the Bear River again. There is one change that is not shown here that I made 2 days ago, which is I added to the development fund a YVHA loan amount to the Cottonwoods HOA reserve of 280,000. And that's an estimated 2 quarters or 6 months of the HOA fees. So in our new negotiations, we've agreed to put that money out as a loan. It's going to go to SAM, Steamboat Association Management. And then as the units sell and close, they pay their HOA due and the money will come back to us. So you'll see that change in the final budget.
question to the real estate team.
Yeah.
Is that, and Elliot, is that adequate? I mean, is that gonna be enough money to start out to have reserves in the HOA fund? So we're confident that the HOA funds will still be affordable, yet they will not get into the rear situations that we see in so many of the condos?
Correct, yeah, so that is the recommendation from Sam when they set up a new HOA is 2 quarters of dues. And that dollar amount does include money for initial reserve study or for reserves. And then once we have our initial kind of board meeting, we'll commission a actual reserve study that'll go in and detail everything that needs to be replaced over the life of the building, and that'll just get updated once that reserve study is in place. But there is an allocation in those dues for money to go to reserves initially.
And so you think a loan is sufficient? We don't need to grant or subsidize it?
No, I think that is sufficient. And that number has come from one of the kind of higher ups, if you will, at SAM that I've been dealing with. And now I've kind of been handed off to the actual like property managers and the people that are going to be like running the property. And he thought that was actually a little high, 2 quarters of dues, but I think we're just going to go with that for now initially, just to be safe. So
To Catherine's question, if we were to, like, let's say somebody doesn't move in until 2nd quarter, are they then responsible for 1st quarter dues?
no.
Okay, so then would we be granting part of that money? It's not necessarily a loan that we're.
So when the units are finished and we file the plat, they become units that can be transferred in the development entity. The partnership will own those and be responsible for paying dues during its period of ownership. And so we won't be going back and saying, oh, well, we paid these during the period of time that we're holding on to them, trying to sell them. So you owe us that. So that it'll be a cost and it's built into the budget of the project to pay HOA dues for 86 units for some amount of time. Catherine, to your point about the financial sustainability of the HOA, we are setting it up to be fully sustainable with the dues that are paid by the owners. Eventually, we will be out of it as an organization, right? It'll be the responsibility of all of the homeowners there. And so, the reason why we're putting our capital in essentially as working capital for the HOA is to make sure that they've got a partner who they owe that money to that's gonna work with them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just didn't know if it was something they needed, like a startup balance to make sure it worked. But the first year is warranted, right? And because with all that, because we haven't been, batting 1,000 on the success of the Cottonwoods building. So I just didn't know if there's, additional anticipated expenses after that first year where the deductible and the, whatever might be more than they have already accumulated. So as long as we're real comfortable that we're setting this HOA up for financial success and they don't need a bit of subsidies to ensure that was sort of the question on it. I think we need to be real thoughtful that if they do need more than a loan and a grant of a small amount to make sure that we get through this first couple of, to get them started, I would certainly support that if necessary. But if it's not, we don't need to. That was my question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the number we have for the operating budget includes a contribution to reserves.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Cindy,
Yep.
a couple of clarifications on the payroll and related, that includes burden costs, whatever benefits. And I would assume that it includes cost of living increase, merit increases, and any market adjustments.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump to the next slide that has payroll.
Okay. Then I withdraw.
It does. It includes the step increases, per 2026 numbers included cost of living increase. So this slide, there's a lot on this slide. The blue line is the expenses by year. The columns are payroll. The dark blue is wages. The orange is benefits, taxes, etc. The all-in cost each year is the number at the top of each column. We have a percentage of expense down here at the bottom, these tiny little numbers that you probably can't see, but you can see in the packet. We also have a running head count of how many full-time employees we had each year. So including everything, from 2025 to 2026, payroll will go up 9%. That's the all-in payroll. Wages will will go up 10%. And the reason for the difference is our benefits, we're saving some money. And we are not planning on any new full-time employees. So we're going to stick with 12 full-time employees. Does that answer?
And also, Sandy, we had our communications person was contract most of 2025, right?
Right.
That's the other difference why the dollar amount's higher than the percentage is because we switched costs from contract to payroll.
Right. And we did not have 12 full-time employees at the beginning of 2025. We had one person come on in January, one in April.
So that's why the percentage of the numbers don't quite high.
What's the value of the benefit package for employee?
It's different for each employee, but I'd say the average is between 26 to 28%. So if you take your gross wages and you gross it up by 26%, it's different for every employee. It depends if you have family on your insurance plan, because we pay 50% of that. It's more expensive for older employees for your long-term disability in your life. There's a lot of variances.
So about 25 or 26%.
I'd say between 26 and 28%. The average of gross up. And every year, at the end of every year, I give each employee a list of their wages, all their benefits, and their all-in package. Just to remind them that they're making more than they think they are. Yeah, you're welcome. Jumping to the properties, we saw this last month, but I just wanted to reiterate that the prices were posted November 1st. We have a $28 per unit per month increase at Hillside, $30 at Fish Creek, and $166 at Whitehaven. We also have our $10,000 included in our development budget to help our renters with the increases if people need rental assistance. And then we have our fund balances. And Kathy wanted me to show you the breakdown. So this is more detailed than we've seen in past years. So we are forecasting at the end of 2026, that's the first line. These are our business enterprise funds. There's the fund balances that we're forecasting. Then you subtract out the net investment in capital assets, and that's land and undepreciated buildings, unspendable. We have restricted amounts that are security deposits, USDA reserve in Hillside case, and any grant money. So then you have the unrestricted fund balance. And then our policy for our mobile home parks is between 6 and 12 months operating expense. We hope for 12 months. So Fish Creek has 12 months of operating expense put aside. Whitehaven has 5 months put aside, and the available fund balance is on the bottom. So 90,000 for Hillside, 440,000 for Fish Creek, and 2,000 for Whitehaven. And in these funds, each amount goes back into the program. So there's no decisions to be made there. But on the governmental funds, they're treated differently according to GAAP. So you've got your forecasted fund balances on the first line, then you've got your non-spendable and restricted amounts. So down payment on the right, that's all restricted for down payment. So we subtract that. Then we've got the general fund that's subject to TABOR. We've got 3% spending. We subtract that. Then we go down to committed and assigned fund balances. And those are the two categories that management or board can control. So for committed, you need a formal action like a resolution to restrict money and to change the restriction. Assigned is much less formal. You can just make a decision that you want 6 months of operating expense in there. You put it in there, you can change your mind at any time, management or the board. So we've got 6 months operating in development and Brown Ranch subtracted. General fund has 2 to 3 months of operating expense, and that leaves us with a total of 4.9 million in the fund balancing governmental funds. We saw this slide last month with some.
When you say it's unassigned, that means it's available and could be used for anything?
Unreserved fund balance. On the audit, you'll see that they assign it and they put to new development because according to GAAP, the only thing that can have an unassigned fund balance is general fund. But I just wanted to show you that's the amount that the board can commit, or just say we want to keep it assigned to new development, or you can say we want some put aside for. So for example, Catherine has proposed that we increase our reserve policy from 6 months to 12. So right now we put aside 750,000. If you guys want to increase that to 12 months, then you're left with a $4.1 million unrestricted fund balance.
And I would like to expand a bit on that. I just think that particularly with the, we don't know what's going to happen in 2028 or 2027 regarding our mill levy. We have 2 years for it. We have 2026 and 2027. We have a lot of things in the pipeline. I just think it would be a thoughtful decision if we had a longer ramp, just in case things change. I mean, we don't know what the economy is going to do. I just want to ensure that we're able to continue completing what we're working on. And 6 months, like you said earlier on the time frame for selecting a development partner. I mean, that's a short time period. I would just think it would be thoughtful if we put a year in there just to make sure that we have the operating revenue to continue our operation regardless of what happens. So that's just my suggestion to the board. If anyone else agrees or disagrees.
I mean, if you have the money, I would also add on to that I think based on a conversation we had previously, having some kind of capital reserve plan. I know that, with each property that are enterprise zones, am I saying that right?
Yes, yes.
You can't have more than 10% of external funding for, but can we make sure we're making a 10% injection each year so that there's some kind of capital reserve building in case grants can't fund a new water system or whatever it is. I just think we need to be really thoughtful about how we're planning for the future of these properties.
I agree with that. Fish Creek has a healthy fund balance and they have their electric system is at end of life. Whitehaven, a relatively new property, has not had any cushion. We have this huge project coming up, and even if we get the $100,000 grant, I wouldn't think that we would change what we're doing besides try to build up that cushion.
Yeah, and it just seems, it's like kind of heartbreaking to raise their rents in order to do these capital projects when we know that they're, you know, maybe not able to afford a capital project. So what can we do to make sure we have options?
I would 100% support what Dakota's saying. If we could inject on an annual basis the maximum 10% we have, just to help them build up their reserves. I mean, just a little historically, one of the reasons Fish Creek has this higher reserve is when Jason got the Colorado Power and Water grant, which was amazing. You know, when we faced the water and sewer years ago at Fish Creek, their pro forma he built out was marginal rent increase over the years. But the goal was that in 50 years, when they had to replace the water and sewer, we'd have money to do it. Because we didn't want some poor boards sitting in the same position we were, where, oh my gosh, we have a water and sewer crisis and no money. So that's why Fish Creek's been building it up. But I would think particularly if we do have a healthy fund balance as a reserve, if we could put that maximum 10% into all three of the developments for our neighborhoods, that would help them in future fiscal sustainability. And I don't think it'd be that much, would it, Sandy, if we did it?
No, it's 10% of revenues. So Whitehaven wouldn't be that much at all. Fish Creek would be more.
And I think this is emblematic of the broader kind of strategic discussion that needs to be had, is to talk about all of these in context and aside for them. Because we have a pool of resources, and the question is how do you divvy that up, right? Each one of them independently is an absolutely excellent use of money. However, we can't do it all. And so we have to look at all of these various things together and make some strategic decisions about where, like, do we put that money into a healthy reserve as opposed to supporting the preservation of housing? Or maybe the correct answer would be that what's the percentage that we put towards developing new housing, preserving housing, and having a healthy reserve? And I think the point being is that that's a future discussion that we want to have. And it's a really critical strategic alignment conversation that we should have as an organization.
Well, and I respect that, Jason, but I would also respectfully suggest that if not now, when? I mean, it's an old saying that don't tell me what your priorities are, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. So I think that strategic discussion should be part of our budget, because we're deciding, I mean, I think that is defining it. So I think now is the time to have that discussion.
Can we not have it when we only have till 2:30? And we have a lot of agenda items, but I agree.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, we're gonna be approving this budget in December, and that is defining our strategic priorities for next year, because that's what our money is the same.
It does not, for approving the budget in December, does not preclude us from having this discussion and later in 2026, deciding you want to make 10% contributions as an example to all of our enterprises.
I would think that
You
would
do that through a supplemental budget.
It would be something like for each property, maybe 20,000 for Whitehaven, up to 50 or 60 for Hillside or Fish Creek. I'm just totally guessing. Mandy's pulling up the budgets, but we don't have to come up with dollar amounts now, but you could say we want to put aside 5% or 10% of their earnings.
Can I make a suggestion that when you come back in December, we can look at that a little deeper and then decide if we want to talk about it in December or at a future meeting?
Yes, we can come back with those numbers, and I guess you could answer right now if you want to increase the operating expense for the governmental funds from 6%, from 6 months to 12 months. It doesn't really change anything on our budget, except for I would just notch it from unassigned to assigned.
Well, Finance Committee, Cole, Kathy, what do you guys think?
I'm perfectly happy with 6 months.
You think 6 months is enough?
I think our operations are currently, yeah. And keeping as much unassigned cash as possible is beneficial to us to make decisions that are coming up. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not set that, I don't stretch the imagination, but I don't wanna make a policy decision based on just doom and gloom now.
No.
We want rational metrics to back that up. 6 months is insufficient for this organization for.
The city does 6 months.
I guess my concern, Cole, is that we need to, at some point then, I think, have a very thoughtful discussion of how we're gonna continue to maintain that $1.7 million overhead when the mill levy goes away. Because if we're gonna rely on just making 1.8 every time off development fees, I think that's I certainly have concerns about that. Mark knows more about how much developers make, but I think for us to assume that we're gonna be able to continue our organization based on those numbers is something we better be very thoughtful about. And that's why I was thinking we need a longer reserve. We have the mill levy for 2026 and 2027, so maybe that's another discussion for the end of 2026.
I would say before the end of 2026, that should be a part of the strategic planning of the mill levy campaign of, if this goes away, this is what we'll have to cut back, or this will be the impacts, so.
Can we have the mill levy discussion separate? You raise a good point. Why don't you let the finance committee take a look at this and come back in December and have some, it's a little hard to say, what do you think? And make a.
Well, this is what we think.
Pardon?
This is what the finance committee thinks. That's why it's being.
No, what I mean is to make us change.
Yeah. If that's the direction, we can do that, but.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on and let's.
That's all I have.
You're done. All right. Any other questions or concerns about our budget recommendation?
I guess the only other question I have, and it segues back to Cottonwood again. Cole, what's the interest rate we have in the Alpine Bank loan?
On the construction loan?
Yeah, that we're taking over, that 4 million.
Oh, that's a prime plus a quarter, so it's currently at 7.25.
725.
Prime plus.
And the reason I'm
Prime plus a quarter. Right?
What's that?
Prime plus a quarter on that infrastructure loan. It's either prime or prime plus.
And what are we getting at our Colorado Trust? What are we making on it?
5s.
Oh, 5s. I'm just wondering if we should perhaps pay down part of that loan, so we have lower interest rates since we're paying a higher % out than we're getting in, and to have to cut that carrying cost.
You would deplete our unassigned cash.
Yeah, I'm just asking, if that's something we should look at doing? I guess if we actually, because if we're looking at carrying, not getting the Cottonwoods phase 2, which I think needs to be a huge priority until Jason was saying 2028 likely. That's, 800,000 or 600,000, $700,000 that we're incurring when it does look like our income is going to be tightening. If maybe we should look at reducing it so we don't pay as much.
Maybe I'd rather have some clarity on what phase 2 looks like before doing that, so that we know when a financial close will take that loan out. I don't want to preemptively pay part of that down.
No, I agree.
It wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. I just think we should look at it, and maybe I still have some PTSD of all the carrying costs we had on Elk River reserves. But I do think we should, I'm not, it gives me a little heartache seeing that big interest expense out there without having a plan. So
Well, the plan is to pay it.
Yeah, I know it is, but I'm talking about the plan to pay it with the development of Cottonwood, where we've got different appraisals. I think we need to be thoughtful if that carrying cost is best avenue.
Oh, I think,
I mean, we have to carry
yeah, but we could pay it down. I'm saying we could pay it down.
Right.
And have.
at the cost of the unassigned cash.
Yes.
I think that everything you're raising, I think are valid points that fortunately we don't have to decide today.
Yeah.
but-
Right, I know.
But I would like to discuss all those in more detail at probably the December meeting or even later, because at least there's not a timeline on them, but they're all really valid, crucial discussions and decisions.
Just to bring it up.
All right. Any other questions on the budget or concerns?
The only question I have is on the rent increases for Whitehaven. Does that include anticipated improvement costs?
Yes, that's what's driving it.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Dude, a couple questions. One is, where did, there's a budget for Hillside, 3+ million. Where did that come from? Who
The-
developed that?
That's in conjunction with the USDA. We submit them a budget for the coming year. They review it and tell us if it's sufficient enough or not.
But I mean, I'm talking about the construction. There's a construction budget.
Oh, the capital outlay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of the review that they did for capital updates on
Who's they?
I forget the name of the company.
J4 Consulting did the capital needs assessment.
Yeah, it's a outside architecture firm that we've hired. And they go through and basically look at, we gave them a list of things that we want to improve at the property. And they kind of go through and assign values to that. I can send that to you, Mark.
We don't have to pursue it any further today. We're not gonna change it anyway, but could I at some point get a copy of that?
Yeah.
And then regarding the rents that we've got, could we, not today, but next month, I would really like to see here's how much they're paying today, here's what the ad is, here's what the new rent is, and here's what the market is. I'd like to know what the market is in relationship to what we're charging.
And it should be significantly lower than
The market of like USDA subsidized apartment buildings or the market
Markets that are
There's
local.
things in Steamboat, because I've asked Lala about that. People have been unable to get, I mean, we're collecting what we can when we see it in the newspaper. But if you call the owner of a mobile home park that we don't own, they're not gonna tell us the rates.
I think we can
right?
use the information that Emily got in the demand study to show what that market rate is, and then we can show our kind of the year over year charts that we have.
And I would say the market also in Hayden. I saw an ad in the article in the paper that listed what they were paying. I think it was talking about that mobile home park being sold or for sale or being sold.
We have the Hayden prices and we have the Oak Creek
And
prices.
so it's just, is to get all of those so that we can relate what we're charging to what the market is. And some of our market is, you know, the $2,000 a month stuff is stupid, but if I recall right, the Hayden monthly rent was 600 or 800.
850.
Pardon me?
It's 850.
850, and I think ours are, I thought they were less than that. And so
Our
it
average-
seems that, and so my point is that we could look at this, not today, but next month, that there's some room to go up and still be really affordable.
Mark, each project is subject to the restrictions of the individual financing. So you can't just look and say, well, we'll do,
I mean, the person renting.
yes.
And also, Mark, too, you have to recognize our goal is to ensure that our residents are not cost burdened.
when you look at these other properties that are market, whether it's 850 or 6 or whatever they're charging, and people are paying more than 30% of their income, then they're cost burdened. That's the market does that.
Well, that,
Yeah.
if,
And it
if
can
we
be-
have a $2,000 a month market, that's
But even
ridiculous.
even the 850 can be, particularly when look at the incomes we have at Fish Creek. And so that's our goal, is to make sure that the properties or the residents aren't cost burdened. Because all that really does is push the burden over to Lift Up or to social services or to our residents not being able to. pay
Again,
their-
I don't know what, I didn't know that each tenant is restricted to 30%.
Well, it's not officially restricted, but I'm just saying that when you, I don't, it always comes up on Fish Creek. Fish Creek lot rents are significantly lower than the market, but they should be, because our goal was for our residents, but I will get into that.
I think we'll have some really good information for you next month. The property management team is also putting together a survey to understand the incomes of our residents at the mobile home parks, which we don't have, and then we can compile all of that to look at these moving forward.
There's that, and there's also, if they're really significantly lower, I mean, these projects also have to, in some fashion, they have to support themselves.
And they are.
We're talking about reserve for replacement, so it all ties together, and it's difficult to make a decision if you don't know what the information is.
Any other questions about the budget?
I will always say market is less relevant than affordability for our residents.
Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
We'll look forward to a final presentation and vote in December.
Okay.
All right. The next item is a communication request from the comms team. And this is an introduction of a concept. We've only allocated 15 minutes, and I know we have a lot to discuss yet on Cottonwoods and its sales. So I'm going to let Jim and Jess take over.
I'll start.
Okay.
The comms team specifically, or more specifically, Jess and John and myself have talked about this concept. And it is a board level discussion that we should have, we believe. And it should lead towards a protocol being developed on communications for board members. And the time frame is up to the board. How much priority you put in this, I think we can introduce it today. We can come back to it in December. We can hopefully enact a policy with board input by the first quarter of 2026. And John or Jess, please jump in at any point. First of all, I want to mention something that comes to mind, and that's confidentiality. When we have an external facing document that we send out anywhere, as a board member, there's no such thing as confidentiality. Know that it will go public and your name will be associated with it. Doesn't matter if it's a social media post, if it's a newsletter, if it's an op-ed, whatever it might be. It does not exist anymore. I would too think that we should be looking at our external communications as board members. We should also maybe monitor or consult with a similar size board, maybe the Community Foundation, to see what they have in place, or our colleagues at the city or county to see what they have. And the big thing that John and Jess and I talked about was, what is the role? What is the role of the board versus the role of the staff? And Jess eloquently has put it, so I'll let you take it over from there. Throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the document in your board packet articulates, I think, the thrust of this, which is to say, like, uncoordinated or unsanctioned public statements, particularly by individual board members, is not good for YVHA. As a board, our job is governance and oversight, and we work in public as a body. We don't communicate individually as private board members on behalf of the whole body when the body hasn't discussed something. So in the communications working group, this came up as a, I think that, to be candid, I'm hoping Kathy knows that we have future conversation about broadly how we differentiate governance and operation between board and staff. I think that there's some hygiene practices that we could adopt that would really help there. But as it pertains to communication specifically, Jim and I both felt that it was appropriate for the board to clarify that when YVHA speaks, we have a comms professional on staff with YVHA. It's the job of YVHA and John at the direction of Jason to communicate on behalf of the organization. This board, as board members, our job is to deliberate in public in a way that's transparent and accountable. And that when we speak as a board, we speak as a board. We don't speak as individual members. Either saying, well, I'm just representing my own opinion. That's not something that happens in a public body. And so this document is intended to really clarify the real importance of letting staff handle operational staff needs, which includes communication on behalf of YVHA, and making sure that as a board, if there are matters that need discussion, that they're conducted in public board setting and board meeting. And if the board wants to direct Jason, and through Jason, John, to communicate something on behalf of the organization, that's the right protocol for that to happen. It avoids confusion. It addresses some of the transparency and the trust issues that have percolated in the community. And again, I think this is bigger than just a comms issue. I think that this is an organizational health hygiene issue that I hope that we'll find some time to address in the near-term future. But specifically as it pertains to communication, we've put together some recommendations here on how that should be approached. Including just working norms going forward that I think would be good for all board members to kind of sign off on and say, yeah, this sounds right for a public governing body. I don't know that a policy or protocol is necessary. Again, I think this is just good hygiene practice on the part of a public board. But talking about this in the communications working group, John and I, in addition to Jim, kind of came up with these recommendations, taking into consideration what's the staff perspective here too. So, at the risk of reading to you, and you can all read for yourself, I would say the norms that we're suggesting is that any external communication that comes out of YVHA is an operational function that's led by the staff. And if there is a need to funnel that through board members, we have a working group that includes board members, Jim and myself at present. All others are welcome to come and join. But that external communication of any stripe, including to, local media sources or anywhere else, that happens through the staff that are hired for that purpose. That board members can channel suggestions through the communications working team, which again, anyone is welcome to either join or come to one of our meetings if you have a specific area where you have concerns. That there are no independent statements of any kind being issued, and that we all agree as a board that the way in which we speak as a body is through board action taken in public meetings, as is appropriate for a public governing body. I don't think that anything here I think this is all pretty garden variety standard stuff, hopefully nothing that, feels, off base for anyone. But I do think, as we previously discussed, going into knowing that, we're going to be teeing up the mill levy for renewal, Cottonwoods is an ongoing and very exciting opportunity for YVHA. There's a lot of high profile things happening, and I think now is the right time to shore this up. So I don't know, Jim or John, if there's anything you would add to that based off of our conversation. But
John, anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think, I would be repeating what.
We have a
So
gatekeeper in
eloquent.
place. We need to use that gatekeeper. We need to use the
Not to-
expertise within the
Yeah, the
organization.
goal is not to restrict.
No, not at all.
To coordinate.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we have a conduit to go through. We should go through that conduit every time.
I just want to share that as a council member on this board, it's common practice for council members to share any board materials with the rest of council. So I would keep that in mind and
100%.
develop any policy. And sometimes I'll share my questions and comments that I brought up during the meeting, just to keep council informed. By no means am I out there on social media sharing this information, but my email is subject to Cora. And so therefore anything I send is also
Oh, totally agree. Well, and I think Dakota, I could be wrong, but like the things that you're sharing are a matter of public record, right? Like we've discussed them in a public board meeting, like all of that is public. I think that that's not the concern. The concern is like, you know, individuals writing missives or memos that are happening. Maybe that conversation happens in the executive committee, but it doesn't happen with all of us. I think many of us have opened up the pilot and been surprised recently at some of the communication that has happened that hasn't been at the behest of the full board. And so it's not to say that, you know, especially Dakota or, you know, Steve or John or, you know, Angelica's not here. You have a unique role to play in representing your local elected body as well as the board. This isn't intended to curtail your ability to do that well. Actually, more so, I think it enhances your ability to do it well, because then as city council, you're not answering questions where, gee, an individual board member made comment outside of a public meeting and you're having to respond on behalf of the board for that, right? So,
I think just to add on to what you all are like talking about, which I think is really important, is just for the board to differentiate, like, okay, is this something that I have talking points that have been accepted by the board to discuss? Or is it something that is not quite ready for prime time public grocery store conversation or whatever it might be? Because we do have that or responsibility as well to kind of advocate and represent within the community. So just having those clear lines, it's challenging sometimes, but really beneficial.
Hey, Jess and Jim, yeah, I like, and John, I like the policy. We've always had sort of a similar policy, just not written. And that has always been that any questions from the press goes to either the, you know, executive director, communications director, or board chair. And I do think that we still need to have, just a thought is we still need to have that board chair as representing us. That's why we have left the leadership, the chair and the vice chair. Because oftentimes I think what happened is the pilot or the press, whoever it is, wants to have communication, clarify something, talk to somebody, you know, like talk to Kathy. And I think the way that we've always handled it, the press calls Kathy, she immediately talks to Jason and John. So we have that unified voice and have that consistent voice. But I think we need to recognize we do not have a good relationship with with the pilot. And I think that relationship building is critical. And I think that's something, you know, as the leaders, a chair and vice chair, to build that relationship. So I just would say, I think I would just suggest that we clarify in here that it's the board leadership is also involved in communicating. I mean, is that, Kathy, what do you think? You're the chair.
Yeah, no, that's been typically, Leah was often quoted with Jason, and again, these actions do not exist in a vacuum. They're coordinated. And sometimes the reporters can be very insistent that their questions be answered immediately, especially when they're on deadline. All the more reason to step back and say, I'll get back to you. So, you know, whether I was on council or planning or whatever, I understand both sides of both the press and representing an organization. What do you think?
I think developing a protocol is excellent. I think we are in, I think, a transition period as an organization, moving from this sort of scrappy startup mode to a much more mature organization with clear boundaries and clear expectations and procedures and protocols for things. And I think that's an overall process that is currently underway. And this is a component of that. And so I think it's great that we see this as part of a broader conversation that we're going to have as a group about how we are going to facilitate that transition into a more kind of stable organization, less startup mode.
I would propose that as board members, we consider what the next logical step would be, if that's protocol, if that's policy. We discuss it further in December, and as mentioned, something is, if so deemed, something is put in place by the early part of next year.
I would say right now, in looking at agenda for December, we're very busy.
How about January?
January looks good.
That,
And you would then catch an input from the new board
correct.
members. So I'm gonna recommend January
That
as
would be
a,
fine.
as a timeframe.
That would be excellent.
Okay.
I mean, Jess, you open to that?
You're not gonna be here in January? Yeah. Yes, that's fine. Okay.
I'll help.
Thank you.
To the bitter end. John, anything?
No, I think that makes sense.
Okay,
I think
January would be
timeframe.
appropriate then.
Okay,
Thank you.
then it
Kathy.
will be on the January agenda. Further conversation.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Now let's move to the Cottonwood, the action item is required. And Alyssa, if you'll take over.
Yeah, so we've been working on the lottery implementation plan as we get closer towards allocating the units at the Cottonwoods. If you'll note, this kind of all started last summer when we did a communication update and kind of set in motion the thought that we would be doing a weighted lottery. We've since grown from that. We recently, as per our last board meeting, we had some fair housing attorneys take a look at the deed restriction implementation plan, the deed restriction, as well as this lottery implementation plan. All of those comments have been incorporated into these documents. And now the actual lottery implementation plan is how we would like to move forward with this. Before we dive into the lottery, I just want to note that there is an ask to approve the deed restriction implementation plan. The only adjustment to that document was actually per Mark's request that all the definitions in the deed restriction, the drip and the lip are all the same. So the only change is the definition to household in that document. Everything else stands as already approved. Huh? Oh. Okay. So the weighted lottery component as at the direction of the board is that you get one entry, the general entry for meeting the deed restriction. You get an additional entry if you have worked for a Routt County employer for 5 or more years. And then if you are a household of 4 or more, the maximum number of entries that a household can have is 3. Given we are close on time, I won't go through the examples. But as of last week, we were brought up to speed by Public House, which is our online consulting, well, I guess not consulting team, the team that's actually holding all of the information for our deed restrictions, the software. They have been doing everything manual, which has brought forth a lot of risk just because it changes hands. There's a paper trail and it's very risk heavy for humans. So they have turned it to electronic. This is a very exciting thing and we only found out about it on Thursday. And this takes so much risk off of YVHA's hands, mostly RSLE and myself, because it puts all of the decision-making, all of the document uploading into the consumer's hands. With this lottery, we will be shifting from doing it per AMI, per unit size, to running 86 individual lotteries. It'll be a lottery per unit, and when the qualified applicant logs in, when we open the lottery, they can still see all of the 100% units and opt which units they would like to enter the lottery for. So someone, a 2-person household, can opt into all 8 100% lotteries if that's what they choose. Someone may also say, you know what, I only want units that have a covered parking space, and say no to the others. When they select the unit that they would like to enter the lottery for, it creates a timestamp and an audit trail, an electronic audit trail for us, which helps protect us come the back end should someone say, well, I didn't get selected in this unit. Why was that? We can pull that information and say, well, you actually selected no on this. That was your choice, not something on YVHA's side. The thought behind the lottery would be that we will open a lottery period, or let me rewind. We will do this still by building. So with building 2 becoming the first unit that will be available, all of those 100% units will open for a time period. The time periods will be open for a week for someone to log in and select which of those 100% units they would like to enter or try for. Once we run that lottery, we will not start the next lottery piece until that one has run, to still allow someone the option to buy up.
What does that mean? No, really, what does that mean?
Well, yeah, if I can jump in, if that's all right.
Sure.
So the income qualification, 100, 120, 140 is all a maximum income. So if you're at 99% AMI, you qualify at 100%, and you also technically qualify at 120, even though the price is going to be different, you may have some, there may be some other factors, like the fact that you have a pretty good size down payment, that you could actually apply for that 120% unit. So what we're doing is we're creating the opportunity for the lowest AMI folks to have multiple shots at these units. We know that somebody at 130% AMI wouldn't qualify for 100%, they wouldn't qualify for 120.
Right.
They're not going to be in those lotteries. But
The
as
inverse is true.
the inverse is true. And so we're doing it by the lowest tier possible. People in that lowest tier of income know whether they're in and they got a unit or they didn't. And then they have a choice based on their personal financial situation if they want to move up to the next tier. So that's what buying up means in this case.
And that would be the one caveat on YVHA's side, because of their pre-approval letter that's required to enter the lottery. We can determine you can't afford this next step, so you can enter these lotteries.
Hey Lala, first I gotta tell you, I love this. This is excellent. This is, yeah, and this is, that's what I remember I was bugging you guys in the first part. I was like, let's do an individual one. So I guess my couple questions. First of all, thank you. This is excellent. Are they gonna get a confirmation email, like when they fill out all these forms, there's an automatic email go back to say, this is what you selected?
Yes.
Okay, well done. I was sort of guessing, but I wanted to verify that. And then also, how are we, I've asked this earlier when doing the communications, how are we outreaching the availability of the down payment assistance? Because when I was looking at the Cottonwood, like I was clicking the boxes on the website, nothing popped up readily that I saw that said, oh, by the way, you guys, you can get a down payment. Now you can do the back end if you look through housing resources, but I just want to make sure that people who basically have no hope, that think there's no way I can afford a house, number one, know about the prices, how low they are, and number two, know that the down payment assistance is available. So is there a way we can make that more prominent on the Cottonwood information, or am I just missing something?
We can make that more prominent on the website. So there's a couple different things that have happened in correlation with this. So RSLE has gone back through all of our, since we launched the pricing and got the 10 million for the buy down, all of our ineligible buyers, sent them information about talking with a lender as well as the DPA program to see if that they may now be able to afford that, and we can switch people from ineligible to eligible. We've had constant communication with the lenders that have read the deed restriction and have stated that they can underwrite it with our DPA guidelines. So they have all of that readily available. There are several banks that have communicated back to us that they are actually working on updating their own first-time home buyer kind of DPA or other assistances to help people get into these units. They're generally only good for, we've been told, like 4 to 6 months. So they're reworking some of those now to be in alignment with when the Cottonwoods go to sale. And then we have gotten the phone calls around the down payment. We're really trying to educate them through their lender on the program, because there's still this idea out there that they can call the housing authority and we're just going to write them a check for 20 grand. And as much as we would all love that, it's, it dovetails in and plays a heavier factor with their mortgage.
The SDR guys could do that.
There's two kind of components. It's good for the borrower to know that down payment assistance may not be the barrier to entry that they believe it to be. So that's an important message to get out there. The second is what Lala was talking about, which is really putting that tool in the toolkit of the lenders, because they're the ones who create essentially the financial cocktail that gets somebody to be able to purchase the unit. And so they're the ones who roll up their sleeves with their personal financial situation, advise them on what's the right program for them to use from a, what type of loan product, what type of down payment assistance programs should they access, and what's the pros and cons of all of those things for them. And so we'll work on it from two different angles. One is informing the consumer. Second is the professional that's working to get the mortgage.
And I guess I was recognizing that lenders are doing the professional. I just want to make sure you know it's available. And the other question is how interactive when they're filling out the forms of what units they want. Can you just like click on the unit and it pops up to the square footage, the design and everything? Or you have to go to a separate screen? How interactive is that?
It's pretty interactive and pretty straightforward. I'll have actual copies to present at our real estate meeting next week that show exactly what the consumer will see.
Okay, perfect.
But ultimately, it'll show unit 1204 with this AMI, this square footage, this parking assignment. It'll have a picture of where the car spot is and all of that information, and they just click yes or no.
And then if they want to look at the schematic of it, they have to go a little flip chart on the other. Okay.
Correct. Second to your DPA, Emily, John and I were talking earlier about doing a press release. Because I don't think we had the formal one about the funding that they got with the Prop 123. So that will also be coming out as well.
Well, and also along with that is in the budget that we've proposed, there's $200,000 of additional money from YVHA being put into down payment assistance to increase that funding. So that's another critical component because we want to make sure that that we have a well-resourced down payment program moving into this phase of selling cotton.
Yeah, I know. And just a friendly suggestions to Jim and Jess and communications. We're just not, our press releases are not getting the exposure that we need. So I wonder if something, now that we're getting close to the lottery implementation, if maybe it'd be merit an idea for Kathy or, John, under the advice of the communications team to, request a meeting and sit down with the pilot and to say, hey, guys, we really want to have a discussion about this amazing program we have, or this opportunity, and, share the information with them. So I really think we need to start building our relationship with our local press. And it's just not working with the press releases. So just a thought on that. And that's why I was mentioning earlier, having, the board chair being our board rep on that. So just a thought, we have to do something.
I agree very strongly. The fact that the pilot hasn't published an article that says, oh, by the way, there are $260,000 condos that are going to be for sale is very disturbing to me. I don't know why not. Maybe you'll have a better idea of why not. But the idea of putting out a press release on down payment assistance seems to me it would go in the same ether space.
Yeah.
And not be part of the public domain, and nobody would know about it. So, and I don't know what the answer is to that other than yelling and screaming, but
I see your point, valid about the pilot, but we also have lots of tools that we are in control over that we can get our message out. And I think we should focus our energy in that space, and the team is doing that. So what you're saying is frustrating, but like we still, that's to Jason's point about making sure the lenders know. That's where we can control our destiny.
Yeah, I was just thinking of ways we could make the public know, and I don't know if there's even an opportunity of doing paid social media on YouTube, Google, or something, because we're getting to that point, and I looked at the time frame of the lottery, and I applaud trying to get it done. I was gonna suggest that having a lot of the time frame over the holidays is not preferable because people won't be paying attention. And so even if we bump back the move-in date by a couple of weeks, I think the inclusiveness is more important than the time frame, because I think right now, the way it's set up, a lot of it's over the holidays. And I would rather have it start, why don't we, maybe a thought is to start at first of the year. We lose a couple of weeks, but I think more people will be aware of it.
So that's kind of what the disadvantage is, and is, moving that stuff where we aren't generating this first lottery until end of January if we were to follow your normal 45-day closing period, that first unit isn't closing until March. And if we're anticipating TCO for building 2 February 16th, there is timing that, you know, someone could be in that unit. I think it's also beneficial after discussing with the agency to push this stuff back, because I feel like everyone's familiar in construction, like we can say the 16th and it's maybe the 18th and maybe the 20th, it may be early, like there's still some room to allow that. And it gives residents, rather than being like, well, my lease is up on the 16th, now I'm homeless. Like we've got more of that buffer time to guarantee that that stuff is a smooth transition for them.
Yeah, I saw too, so you're recommending now we start outreach, it started on the January 1st.
So the initial thought would be that we would launch it before Christmas and then we would hit it hard after. So everyone can tell their parents that they want $150,000 for a down payment.
Real estate for
Um,
Christmas.
Remind everybody that they don't want a new car right now.
Yeah.
All of those other kind of components, and just to let them think through it and get ready, but then also enjoy the holidays and hit it hard in January.
And I will say, you made a point about how I could get lost in the holiday shuffle. As somebody with unsecure housing, you're always looking at it.
Okay.
You're always checking Zillow, you're always on Facebook Marketplace. It's never missed, so it won't get lost in the shuffle.
If we're banking on selling all of these units, and that's great. What we have talked about in the past is that we would, when people know the prices, there would be increased interest. And that increased interest would tell us which AMIs are most interested.
Yep.
So with the fact that maybe the advertisement hasn't been strong enough, have we seen an increased interest?
Do you want to give the numbers?
Yes, we have seen an increase in interest. We did get a new, I'm not into
That's fine.
Zoom, but we did get, our dashboards did show a significant increase. I think we were around 250 for a while. With the price announcement, we're now at 319, 320 and ticking upwards.
And how does that relate to the AMIs that have shown interest?
There is an average, like income by household size, but it's kind of hard to say because I did get a lot of interest of like, hey, I'm in the 100% AMI, but I really want that 140 big, huge deck unit. Looking can I buy that? So we might be seeing lower AMIs, but it seems like there's a bit more purchasing power than the data is like letting on.
Can I ask a question on that? With the STR funding, is it flexible where like, let's say after 3 months, you're really seeing more of a need for moving people up in AMI that can't afford that higher tier? Can that STR support that, or like what? I guess what is that looking like? And you don't have to answer that right now.
No, that's fine.
Send an
That's
email.
great. So before we published the pricing, we went through and actually inflated some of the pricing. So we have a pool of funds. So if someone, you know, the maximum that they can afford is 415,000 and the unit's 420, we have some money to help negotiate those pricings. Now it's not coming to the table and negotiating, but we wanted the flexibility of saying, how can we get you into this home and how do we have that? So we do have those tools to help maneuver in whatever's not used. If we notice that there are more of the 100s, we need to drop it. We do have some money set aside to help
When you
move those
said you
prices.
inflated the prices, can you say more about?
Sorry, that's probably the wrong term.
Yeah, so.
That's not gonna go into.
Yeah, that's the wrong term.
So we set the prices to the maximum allowable per the grant agreement that we actually have with the city. If you go through and add all of that up, it is $503,000 more than the maximum sale price. And that is essentially a cushion that we can have to make some adjustments to prices as needed. Now that could happen later on where we find, wow, this unit really was poorly priced for the demand. We can drop that. So it gives the selling team a little bit of price flexibility to utilize. to get the full benefit of the money that you guys helped provide. We have a side agreement with our developer partners. If in any circumstance, we sell more than $31.1 million in real estate, the money's coming back to the city.
Great. And I'd love to follow up with you after the meeting if possible. Just one more question.
And well, Jason, thank you for setting that up. That was great thought. That's good thoughtfulness and to have that buffer, so just in, we don't want someone to come in and be a couple $1,000s off and miss an opportunity.
Yep.
That's a great idea, so.
And I would say to the update on the where the numbers sit, that was our goal, was to get 300 plus, because well, the one strategy is to make sure the whole world knows about this, but the other is to make sure that we have a backup and a backup for each unit. We have a buyer and we have someone in second and third place.
There, yay. We still want the whole world.
Yeah, for sure, but just we also want the project to succeed and need us to sell, so.
The only other question I had is on the 86 lotteries.
Yep.
Which seems like a lot of lotteries.
Yep.
And I assume that can be done because we're using this electronic program.
Yes.
The question I have is, how comfortable are we that the electronic program functions as advertised? And we will be able to use it. And if there's any question, when we drop back and we have to do this manually, would we have 86 lotteries?
So, okay, breakdowns. First one. So we will be able to start uploading all of the information the first week of December and have 3 weeks for us to run lotteries in this system before we actually have our clientele entering it. So we will be able to see if we can break the system before we set it live. So I think that's a key component.
Yeah.
Public House, prior to this being 100% electronic, has done them manual. So we can revert back if, internet just is no longer a thing come January and we have to do this by paper.
So it wouldn't be 86 lotteries.
I think if that's the way we market it and that's the way we go and that's the way we are going to start presenting this, that we would need to run 86 lotteries and allow.
Mean that each one will take a week and it'll be 86 weeks long?
We'll still open it by AMI. So when we open the first lottery entry period for a week for building 2, all of the 100% units you will be able to select from. The 1 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms, and the 3 bedrooms, because you are no longer waiting to see how it plays out. If you get the 3, should you now enter the 2? Should you this? You can say, yes, I only want the 3 bedrooms. I only want 2 bedrooms. My family cannot fit in a 1 bedroom. I'm not doing it.
And so to answer your question more specifically, we will work with Public House to craft a paper contingency plan. So that if for whatever reason, the day we go to run the lotteries, AWS is no longer working. None of the servers in the world are transmitting data. Then we're capable of pivoting and we know exactly how we.
And then this system is used, a lot of the other housing authorities use this, where you pick and this is not uncommon. If you look at other developers in that communities, they use a system where they use it to design lotteries. So also you mentioned we're gonna have someone be an auditor, overseer, like a trusted review. Have we decided who that's gonna be or how?
We have not decided who that is, and with us making a pivot to an electronic, there's full videos on the front end that show the consumer how to use it. There's a video for the back end that shows the transparency of what control we actually have over it. It comes with the timestamps and all of that piece. So ultimately it would be one person clicking the run lottery with the mouse button. Everybody does have a unique ID. Those unique IDs are emailed to that household so they know each weighted component, you are assigned a different unique ID. So someone will potentially have 3 and they will have all of that information. The beautiful part about this also is before we run the lottery, everyone that has selected yes for 1204 we can see them and verify that they meet that restriction and that we didn't, you know, a 120 didn't accidentally get into an area where they could potentially win and we have to say, I'm sorry, you actually don't qualify for this unit. We want to try and mitigate as much as we can. So it lets us check, once we've run the lottery, it allows us to check again to make sure the people selected are good. And then we can notify them who's been selected and what that list looks like.
And I do think even, I know this is about IT related, but even if it was like a trusted reviewer, like a Jason Lacy or accountant or someone, just outside of this authority to review the process and say, yes, it works, I think would add trust to the system. So just thought.
Yep.
Yeah, the real estate team has not looked at this. This is brand new.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm excited. Yes.
Can I just ask a quick time check?
Yes.
Just because we have one other item.
Yes.
and I don't mean to be selfish, but I have a hard stop at 3.
okay.
We go through another hour over.
Right.
I had to leave for the last one.
Mhm.
So, could we just check on where this falls priority wise so we can thing?
Are we ready for, are there any other questions on the, drip
And the lip.
lip? And are we ready to, adopt those as policy? Because that's the action item. Any questions?
The only change on those are the definition.
With the definitions,
Yeah,
aligning all the definitions.
The lottery implementation plan has not been approved, that document in its entirety, but the drip was only the definition. Correct.
I think we added the fair housing statement too. Was one of the recommendations to both those documents.
I would think so, whether you add the statement or add the logo or both.
Yeah, from the.
Yes. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Is that there's a, excuse me. There was a stipulation that somebody that was successful in the lottery had 5 business days to enter into a contract after receiving notice. Is that reasonable?
Yes. And that's been discussed.
Are
with the
they
agency.
are we writing the contract for
No,
them?
the agency is writing the contract.
Well,
Well,
that's.
the Colorado Real Estate Commission
Well,
wrote the
we're
contract.
using the agency's.
All of the
Correct.
documents will be available for people to review prior to the lottery, prior to them going under contract. So they will see the form contract, they will see the form disclosures. And there will essentially, the only difference between all 86 contracts, people who are buying and the unit description
Sales.
and the sale price.
Was that the standard timeframe for other affordable housing sales in Mountain Resort, that 5 days?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this gets to, I think the point that Sarah Catherine kind of brought up, it's like, how many weeks does this take? If you give them 15 days to select their units, we now have to wait 15 days to then run the next set of audits. And so it pushes out your timeline in a significant way.
My question is really, you probably gonna have quite a number of inexperienced purchasers. And so is 5 days really adequate? If the contract is, if they can pre-read it, if literally the only change is the name of the person and the unit number, then that makes it relatively simple. There isn't anything they have to do. But other than give it to them in advance and really encourage them to read it.
And that's the benefit of running the first lotteries in January is we are due for a contract adjustment. So now every unit will have the same real estate contract versus if someone went under contract in December, there would be changes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, then I will entertain a motion to accept the drip as presented
In the lottery.
and the lottery implementation plan.
motion to approve the drip with noted changes associated with.
The drip,
Request.
do you want to do both or do you want to do them separate? Can you do both?
Yeah,
All right,
with the drip with associated to Mark's comment and the FHA requirement and the lip. I assume
no,
that one
fair,
gets.
fair housing, not FHA.
Okay, the fair housing,
Okay,
and
and
the lip.
lip,
As stated.
okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I will second that.
Okay. I have a motion by Lou and a second by Michael Ann. Is there any further questions or discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Patrick
Aye.
and Leah?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Now, we don't have anything else under this topic, right? Okay. What I'd like to do is probably have to tap down the expectation. I'm gonna ask to go into executive session with the understanding that we will have a brief discussion and continue this at the next meeting, because obviously this is just so everybody's, my expectation is Jess will just walk us through. This is a recap of the survey that was filled out by the board. So this is not let's go into executive session. We can explain what it is and what it's not. We're not taking any action. This is information. So do I have a motion to go into executive session? Hold on, let me read in accordance with Colorado revised statute regarding personnel matters, going back to CRS. CRS 246402 for F for the purpose of discussing personnel matters related to the executive director performance. I know it's scheduled for 30 minutes, but we have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. So
moved.
Second,
Jim, and who was the second?
that was me.
Thank you.
And do I take it then that there will be no resumption?
No,
Okay.
we'll be at the meeting. So I'm gonna ask that only the board members and our executive director stay for this part of the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
You're the host, but I'm here than that, so.
So I'll just bring it to the office.
Stuff.